Great Debaters Contest is powered by Blaze, by Safaricom, the Youth Network.
Welcome to the Great Debaters Contest, the home of great debate. We're in Nakuru region, ready to bring you the very best of what this place has to offer. I am Mariam Bishar.
And I am Austin Nyumbo. The motion of the day is corruption is the key undoing to quality infrastructure in Africa. We have Anester victory going against Upper Hill. Mariam, who's going to take the day?
Proposer number one, you may take the stage and help us answer that question. You have 3 minutes.
According to Karl Spross, an Austrian novelist, corruption is worse than prostitution. The latter endangers the morals of an individual, but the former invariably endangers the morals of the entire society. My name is John Mwendia, representing Upper Hill Mixed Secondary School. I hereby propose to the motion, corruption is the key undoing to quality infrastructure in Africa. The meaning of corruption. Corruption is dishonest or illegal behavior, especially of people in authority. Key, major or main, undoing, the reason to why something fails or becomes unsuccessful. This information is according to Oxford Advanced Learners Dictionary. Straight to my first point. Closer to home, back in Kenya, corruption has affected the ability of the Kenyan government to finance the budget expenditure, which clearer and equal and appropriate use distribution of resources. This has led to adverse budgetary consequences. For example, you all know Mombasa County. 22 irregular bank accounts were identified which had the money that was supposed to build more hospitals in county, operate more game reserves, and also fund ECD programs. Point number 2. Recent media reports also indicate the embezzlement of funds, which has decreases the investors' confidence in our nation. Corruption discourages and diminishes both foreign and domestic willingness to invest in our businesses as well as sporting activities. For example, you take the Rio scandal. It was an arena for the Kenyan athletes to post and show their amazing athletic talent. But what happened? Unfortunately, the allowances and equipments that were supposed to be used for the competition were stolen. Who knows by who or where were they taken? Dear listeners, if corruption reduces, more job opportunities will be created to the young youth. More job opportunities will be there in the arid and semi-arid areas. People who are found doing this act, they post a great deal of hypocrisy. And citizens of the earth, what is hypocrisy? Hypocrisy is the audacity to preach integrity in the den of corruption. Thank you all.
Opposition will hear opening statements from you. You have 3 minutes.
You cannot convince a monkey that honey is sweeter than a banana. As much as I try to believe you, I still not convince my heart that corruption is the key meaning main factor that's leading to quality infrastructure in Africa. While I'm Maureen Wanjiko from Anester Girls Victory, to oppose this motion, the corruption is the key leading to quality infrastructure in Africa. So what is corruption? Corruption is a form of dishonesty or ethical conduct by a person entrusted by a position of authority to often acquire for personal benefit. And what is infrastructure? This is a fundamental facilities that the system serving a country, a city, or an area for an economy to function. Which of these infrastructure am I talking about? I'm talking about water, electricity, telecommunication, name them. There's so many. Well, education is the lead of human source to what is best and making what is best out of them. But again, when the best is not good enough, is not of quality, then the best loses its meaning. I'm going to focus mainly on the education system in Africa. In Africa, the education implemented on us is more theoretically other than field-based. What am I meaning about this? You're only aiming at scoring high grades in schools and not getting the skills that are needed. In one of the African countries, to be precise, Africa, Kenya to be specific, Kenya, an institution, Nairobi University, was to construct a tower. This tower, they had to call a company in China, the Wuyi company, to come and build that infrastructure. Now, this is a university which produces graduates yearly in an engineering course. If they are not proud of their product simply because they are not skilled, will they be able to handle this development the way they should be? That's about education. We have HIV and epidemics. HIV is a disaster to most of countries, not only Africa, but the world at large. Now, let's focus on South Africa. South Africa, 6 million of its population are having HIV and AIDS. A report by BBC showed that 2.2 billion rands were used in providing services to these HIV victims. Now, that's amount of money that will have been used in development projects. This is the amount of money that will have been used to increase the infrastructures in that country. That was in 2014. Now, another report was also reported that in 2015, even that number increased to 24 billion rands, meaning if that money was only put into development, then we will have quality infrastructure. I rest my case.
Rebuttals now. We'll have the proposition. Take 3 minutes.
And to my colleagues, you've said there's foreign dominance in Africa, but you leaders, most leaders in Kenya, the prominent ones, always take their children to study abroad, mostly in the first world countries. How do you expect Kenya in specific to improve in infrastructure? Lydia Wanjiru, representing Upper Hill Mixed Secondary School, and I'm here to propose the motion that states corruption is the key undoing to quality infrastructure in Africa. First and foremost, poor maintenance of public infrastructure. Due to corruption, maintenance and repair of infrastructure has always lowered the development system. This is whereby most leaders tend to approve new projects rather than to finish the old projects which were approved before for fear of being exposed. This is because they are corrupt. When leaders are corrupt, most citizens themselves become corrupt. And this is clear because it is easier to fool people rather than to convince them that they've been fooled. Secondly, inferior public infrastructure. The allocation of public procurement through a corrupt system leads to use of substandard goods. And a good example, I'll use Burkina Faso and South Sudan. Okay, expatriates have always been hired to come and provide technical assistance, but what do? They tend to use these substandard materials. But what do Africans realize this? Sorry for that. But do Africans tend to realize this? No, because they are blinded. They are blinded by these physical structures on the upper surface, but on the ground, they don't know what it contains. Look around, look everywhere. We've been experiencing every morning, night, people are dying. Recently, we lost more than 20 people. Why? Look at our roads, potholes everywhere. What are our leaders doing? Busy outside countries, developing other nations, storing their money, corrupt. But Kenya, Africa as a whole, where are we heading to? Actually, Kenyans, we have to do something about it. And to my third point, mismanagement of funds. Corruption leads to poor management of funds, whereby funds are set aside for certain projects, but they tend to be used for various other projects. A good example is the Afia House scandal of 2016. Oh, the whole of December, our doctors had striked. Why? This is because 3 billion could not be accounted for. Why? This is because the American government, using its ambassador, stated that they are not going to help or provide and help the projects to go on. Thank you.
Opposition will hear your rebuttal. You also have 3 minutes.
You cannot use a microscope to look at the sky. Neither can you use a telescope to look at a specimen. You said that we are developing other nations. Then how do you develop other nations if you have not developed your own? Firstly, unskilled labor. Our country, our continent is well known for brain drain. Brain drain, the movement of highly skilled, highly qualified to other places where they can get good pay or for better working conditions. I can remember on 21st of January 2015, Thabo Mbeki, the former president of the South African Republic, he said, and he quoted that, I'm going to quote that, "We have lost 20,000 academics and 10% of highly skilled information, technology, and finance professionals." Well, that got me asking myself, can we as Africa retain the best and the brightest? I guess not. Moving on to my second point. I am a Class 8 candidate, and I scooped good marks in my KCPE results. I am supposed to be joining Form 1, but coincidentally, my father's car breaks down, and he opts to mend his car using almost half of the money. What am I saying? Misplaced priorities. As an African continent, we have got misplaced priorities. Let's take an example of an African state, Kenya, in this matter. When they went out to campaign for the African Union Secretariat, they used a lot of money, millions of money. I can take, for example, that the deputy president went traveling to 10 states using a chartered private jet. In the Star, previously, the Star had revealed that to take a chartered private jet, it is 1.5 million per hour. Well, a week's mission, a total of 168 hours, well, that's a lot of money, roughly 100 million. At the same time, our doctors were on the streets, striking. People were dying. In the hospitals, someone was dying. By that moment, we were busy campaigning. I'm not arguing the fact that we shouldn't get the post. I'm arguing that the timing was wrong to prioritize it. Our doctors were out there striking. We need to pay our doctors good money. With good pay, we get quality services, and with quality services, we have quality hospitals. Now, is it wrong if I take my seat, continuing to oppose this motion? I guess not. Thank you.
The proposers have been asked that they stated earlier that our leaders contribute to the development of other countries. They've been asked to explain and expound on that. And the opposition have been asked if corruption is not impeding the growth of our infrastructure, then what is? I will have proposer number 3 take the stage and respond. You have 3 minutes.
I'll begin by answering one of the questions from the audience. You asked, what picture are we trying to bring about corruption, that we should elaborate more about this corruption, that we should define it in a better way for you to understand, right? I'll repeat the definition. Corruption, dishonest or illegal behavior
especially of people in power. And what do we mean by this? This is where my second proposal comes in, whereby leaders are mismanaging the funds. They tend to use the funds that was put aside to use it on given projects. For example, let me give an example. If I give you money to build a hall in Moi Forces Academy, you take that money and go build toilets in Nakuru Girls High School. That is mismanagement of funds. Next is a question that was posed by our opposers. The reason is that the leaders are so corrupt that they decide to take their children in first world countries instead of developing their countries so that their children can school in their own countries. Many of the political leaders in Africa, if you have to trace, you'll find out that their children, either they did not school in their countries in all their education lives. They were taken in first world countries. It means that our political leaders have a clear picture that in Africa there is low infrastructure in terms of schools, the education sector. And instead of them sitting down and embracing the problem, they decide to take their children abroad, leaving aside the common man who cannot afford that money to go to the first world countries and educate their children from there. You had said about something to do with he took jets to 10 states, doctors striking. You remember the saga of Eurobond, right? That one is closer home back in Kenya. Our president did the same thing. He went to the Dutch countries and marketing our Eurobond so that it could be bought. What happened when the money came back to Kenya? How it was used, how it was utilized, it is unexplainable. Nobody came out to give us the order of how it was used. And with that, I rest my case. Cynthia Lutuvula from Upper Hill Mixed Secondary School.
Opposition, you have 3 minutes to respond to the audience.
The moment we want to believe something, we suddenly see all the arguments for it, but then we become blind to the arguments against it. But first of all, let me just answer the question, that was addressed to us. You asked, if corruption is not the key, then what is? Actually, we're not disputing that the fact that corruption is there. No one said that. We are only saying that apart from corruption, there are many other things leading to poor quality in infrastructure. Peace Mudel from Anester Victory Girls opposing the motion that says corruption is the key undoing to quality infrastructure in Africa. Apart from corruption, we have many other points. For example, demand and supply. Have you ever wondered, what if there was a lot of demand and low supply? Due to poor performances in the past African leaders, the quality of infrastructure was decreased. And you know what? The agitation for infrastructure became overwhelmed the provision. Take, for example, in Nigeria, they have a landmass of 9,110,000 square kilometers with a population of about 150 million people. And in this country, there is a road network of 193,200 kilometers. Surprisingly enough, 70% of these roads are damaged. These reports were given by Premium Times, where they proved that in Nigeria, the demand is there, but then these people don't supply. Let's move on to the next point. What about military and conflicts? Do you know that military spending is causing a very immense decrease in development. Take, for example, Algeria. Algeria was said to be one of the greatest spenders in Africa. Why? Because these people use their gross domestic products in military. You find that the public funds that are supposed to be allocated to other things, like infrastructure or building of roads and equipment in our hospitals, these public funds are taken forth to our military. Is that, no, you want to tell me that this is also corruption? You asked a question of if we want engineers to build, to construct our stuff, and yet we are taking it to, the leaders' children are taken to universities. Actually, you asked the question to us, and I don't think you really need an explanation because you already answered yourself. Thank you.
Final statements now. Proposition, you have 1 minute.
Corruption is the key undoing to quality infrastructure in Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, corruption can no longer be viewed as a victimless key to undeveloped infrastructure in Africa. It is clear that corruption has a strong potential to steal the wealth of a nation and impoverish its people. The more corrupt a country is, the lower its economic growth, which heavily relies on quality infrastructure. We cannot say that corruption is just a key undoing to quality infrastructure, but we should all agree that corruption is the key undoing to quality infrastructure in Africa. You have a dream, and I believe I also have a dream. We will all want to one day achieve. We will all want our dream to come true. So let us fight corruption. Let us not let corruption be the main obstacle towards reaching our dream. Thank you.
Opposition will hear your final statement. You have a minute.
Obwoge Lin is the second opposer's name, and I'm back again. And what I have to say is that in the African land, we have a convergent focus. What we need in our land is a divergent focus. Let's not harp on the same string. There is more. There is the key. We have found the key. We've given the key. We have delivered as a nest of victory. We let you decide, is it the key or not? Thank you.
Upper Hill Secondary, I'll start with John Mwendia. You started off well as the first speaker. The statement on media reports on embezzlement of funds, you needed to give citations. Lydia, I liked the case study on Afya House scandal. That was good. Cynthia, I believe it is one's choice where the children should school. You told us the senior government officials or the leaders, they take their children abroad for studies. And I was wondering how this is corruption. You are to go further and show us how these leaders are corrupt or how they use their corrupt ways to school their children abroad. So that did not come out well.
To Anester Victory Girls, I love the fact that Maureen started over by telling us quality education, diseases, and other things as alternatives. And Lynn, first of all, remember you're a cross-examiner. You did not cross-examine your team. That's your role. You talked also about brain drain and priorities in other projects, lack of priorities, and peace as well, give other examples. My question to you is this. When we talk of the motion saying corruption is the key undoing, what if you decided to say, no, it's not corruption, but it's this one thing that is the key undoing? That would have been powerful, is it? However, I think you choose to give us more examples, which is still fair. Across the teams, I would ask you, what is infrastructure? Because I think we give examples that are beyond that. What is infrastructure? That definition wasn't given, and I think that's why you lost it from the word go. But all the best, at least in other areas of style, mastery, passion, and delivery. There were some good scores out of it. All the best.
Upper Hill High School, the judges awarded you 63%. Please give them a round of applause. Anester Victory, the judges awarded you 66%. You're our winners for the debate.
Well, of course, that was a wonderful debate. We congratulate the winners and both teams. Thank you to our in-studio audience as well, and you at home for watching. Follow us on Twitter and give us your feedback at Great Debaters EA. I am Mariam Bishar.
And I am Austin Nyumbok. Catch you next time.
The Great Debaters Contest is powered by Blaze, by Safaricom, the Youth Network.